So it was an illegal removal.
Right.
We agree. The government agrees.
Let-
Plaintiffs agree. The SCOTUS agrees.
Hang
we all
on.
agree. I'm glad we all agree. Okay, cool.
Hang on.
I'd like to talk about the cover thing. I came up to talk about Garcia. I don't remember how Perkins Coie even got brought up. I think it was the one.
Yeah, I know. Hey, don't you think if they would have charged them in March straight up with trafficking and not waste money and sending them off to CCOT, that we
Waste
wouldn't have
money
argued
on
the last 2
sending him off
months?
to CCOT. The money's going to
Yeah.
be wasted bringing him back here, holding him in custody,
We would have
prosecuting
saved
him,
the
and
round
holding
trip.
him in our prisons.
We would
He
have saved
shouldn't
the
have been
round
deported in the
trip
first
cost
place.
if he was just charged to begin with in March.
True.
Yeah.
And he shouldn't have been deported to El Salvador in the first place.
It's the one country on planet Earth he couldn't be deported to.
I think there was 2 countries that he couldn't be deported to. I think it was El Salvador and Guatemala.
No, it was only.
No,
It was
yeah,
El
San Salvador
Salvador and
country.
Guatemala. They made it clear.
No, there was a typo in the ruling. The application that he
There wasn't
filed
a
for
typo
asylum.
in the ruling. There wasn't
was.
a typo in the ruling.
It
It wasn't a
absolutely
typo.
was.
What
It
does
was.
what you need to look up those statutes and read them.
I read the whole thing inside and out, no, the whole timeline. But
Then
it
go
doesn't
look
matter
up those
because
statutes. Then what does internal relocation mean, Raul?
what do you the statute for what? What are you
That are
referring to? When
listed
you,
in that this I have it. Well, I don't know if I have it on here as a
it
background.
was a
But
withhold. That's all. He won the withhold. That's it.
That's well,
Granting for
yeah,
withhold application, it's granted. The
what
withhold
what
application is
That was like
granted.
October of
code
2019.
that's mentioned, the
Right.
U.S. code that's mentioned in that.
It was Title 8. It was a basic Title 8 case.
Oh my God, Raul, you are so fucking frustrating.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The code that's listed for withhold, it says Guatemala and it says El Salvador, because when you look at the actual code that is listed for the granting of withhold, there is language there that pertains to both countries because of the fact it mentions his sister living in Guatemala and the fact that they're still being harassed or whatever.
Correct.
And his cat claim was denied for El Salvador.
Well, what 3 things were applied for, right? Because he
Asylum,
lost his
withhold, and cat claim, which is convention
all 3
against
were,
torture.
and there were 3 applications that haven't been made public yet. But it's clear by reading the context of
What
the final
hasn't been
ruling,
made public yet? Everything's been unsealed.
the applications that were submitted for those 3 things. He had to file an application for
we have the
asylum.
court rulings.
The ruling does not have the applications. There's
No,
7
but
attachments.
why do we need
the
the
attachments
application
are
when we have the ruling?
because the application says El Salvador and it's not public. But that's why I'm saying it's a typo
We
in
know
the
it's
conclusion.
El Salvador. It's El Salvador and Guatemala.
No, it's not and Guatemala.
Well,
It's
that's
not
the
and
and
Guatemala.
Guatemala
That's
is
what I'm trying to tell you.
it's not even materially
me
relevant to
explain
the
why.
case. I don't think.
In the 2 no, it's a little bit of relevance. In the 2 pages of the background in that final ruling, there's discussion of why he was being persecuted. And all of it was like 7 years in Honduras with their business. They
Not
moved 3
Honduras,
times.
Guatemala.
No, it was all Honduras for 2
It was
pages.
Guatemala.
Let me finish. Why are you interrupting?
Because it's
sentence at
Guatemala. I literally looked up
I'll pull it
every
up.
single town that they mentioned.
I'll
I
pull
pulled
it
it
up.
up on Google Maps. It's Guatemala. I mean, not Guatemala. It's El Salvador.
It's El Salvador, correct.
You said
It's all-
Honduras.
my bad. All El Salvador. All El Salvador for 2 pages.
And a withhold
And
can
then the
be
last
granted
sentence,
for
it says, the
your
last
country
sentence.
of origin or your
my
last
God.
place of residence.
Why do you complain about being interrupted when you do it way more?
Because
For
you
real.
never let me finish. You never let me finish
I'm
my
in the middle
original
of
point.
speaking. Let me
Oh my
finish.
God.
There's 2 pages in the final ruling talking about the El Salvador persecution for a 7-year period from the family that he did in a 2-day hearing. 2 pages. In the very last sentence, to be emphatic, it states that not only did they go through all the 7 years, the family moved 3 times, and the 3rd time they moved to Guatemala, and they're still harassing them in Guatemala. That's the only reference to Guatemala in a 2-day hearing
That's
about their
false.
persecution.
That's false.
I'll share my screen if you want to put me in the big box. 1 sentence. And then later when he's talking about, and then it says, okay, these 2 pages apply to the 3 rulings below. And they talk about asylum, they talk about the withhold, and they talk about the cat. And in the cat, he wrongly mentions Guatemala. And in the final conclusion, he wrongly mentions Guatemala, but he clearly
The cat
states
claim was for El Salvador. It clearly states in the actual ruling denied cat claim El Salvador. Number 3.
Well,
the applications for all three were the same for
What-
El Salvador. So you're making my point.
what
That's
is
not
what is the
true.
relevance of if he has it from just El Salvador or El Salvador and Guatemala if he was deported to El Salvador?
Well, number 1, the withhold was based on persecution from other gang members, and the cat claim was denied based on persecution by
opposite.
the government, and he was given to the government.
Okay. I don't
Ruling
understand
also
the
states that
relevance
if he
there
truly,
either.
right, if he truly was
The
a gang
withhold
member,
was granted because he said they were being harassed by a rival gang in
not a rival, a
in
gang.
El Salvador, Barrias 16 or 18, whatever the fuck it's called, Barrias.
Barrio 18,
I don't know.
Barrio 18, yeah.
And so that's just people in the country that's what he was given the withhold for. The cat
Correct.
claim, convention against torture, was denied, and a cat claim is based on the government persecution, and that was denied, and he was given to the El Salvadorian government.
It was still illegal to send him back to El Salvador, though, right?
Correct.
No, I
No?
don't think so.
How is that
don't
not?
know.
How is
Okay.
it? How?
I haven't said
Please
much.
tell me
I'm
how.
curious about something. What on April 10th was there an actual admission that it was an administrative error with his
Yeah,
deportation?
did that guy lose his job?
Oh,
I asked
Robert
a
Serna
question.
did not lose his job. He's the ICE
I'm-
director.
Yes.
He's the
I'm
one that
asking
said it
a
was
I
basic.
thought the
error.
attorney that made that claim lost their job.
No,
It was
no,
actually
Rob-
Christy Nome who admitted that it was an administrative error.
No, it was Robert Serna. He did an affidavit.
It was
It's an
also
attachment.
Christy Nome.
And Christy Nome. And in subsequent paperwork, they all said it's an administrative error, including the SCOTUS,
Yep. SCOTUS even ruled it was an administrative error, and that he had a valid withholding of removal
based
from
on
El
what
Salvador,
Robert
so it was
Serna and
illegal
the
to deport him.
government admitted to.
I just don't understand. I'm just trying to piece this together. So if I point out that this administration admitted that, and I gave you the name, I told you who, Director of Homeland Security, Christy Nome, she admitted this, told you what date, to SCOTUS on April 10th, 2025. Why am I being told, no, I'm wrong, and then yes,
Nobody said
blank?
you were wrong. We've said in here every single fucking day since the day that
Then I don't understand the going forward
wife-beating
with it
piece
then.
of shit was deported. We've said it was an administrative error. I'm arguing my point is he was denied convention against torture, which is the government of El Salvador. And my argument, if I was the attorney in the case, would be he was handed over to the El Salvadorian government, where they ruled he would not face torture from the El Salvadorian government.
Do you agree
Right.
that? Do you agree that the Supreme Court? Wait, real quick. Do you agree that the?
I want to ask.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Before you go, I want to
Let
ask this
Daniel
basic
know,
question.
let
Just
Daniel
to
know,
finish
yeah.
the thread on this. I want to check our work to make sure that it's consistent. So, if it matters whether or not it was a government versus a cartel or so, all right, was Donald Trump justified in using the Enemy Aliens Act of 1798?
He did it in this case.
I'm asking,
He wasn't-
was it justified?
Yeah, he's here illegally. Our country's being invaded.
That's not all that's required for the Enemy Aliens Act of 1798.
Yeah,
It has
he's
to
also
be-
a member
it has
of
to be-
MS-13.
it has to be-
Ringo wasn't
also a
charged
member of
under the
MS-13.
AEA.
Yeah,
he was charged under the INA.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. This case has nothing to do with the AEA.
I know. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about
okay.
other
Why-
things. I'm
why
trying
are
to
you
check
bringing
consistency.
up the
I'm
AEA?
not. I know. I'm
said-
trying to check consistency. I want to see whether or not the
You're
thing
just
you're
lost
saying
in the
was not
sauce
just
and you
respected.
lied.
don't know
Now
what's
you're
actually in these
I
court
didn't claim
documents.
that he was charged.
Don't
under
make
the
this
Enemy
other
Aliens.
point
I'm
where you're trying to
asking.
make. Right.
You
Bro,
said in
I'm
this
trying to check
case.
for
Just let him
consistency.
finish. Holy.
Let him ask the question. Right.
I am simply trying to check consistency to make sure backwards. So
It's really hard
all
to
right,
be
let's see.
consistent when you're not even getting the questions.
I can't
proper.
con-
You
literally
interrupt
That's
me.
true. It's really hard to be
He's
consistent when he can't
comparing
ask the
this
Bro, I
questions.
was quiet for a long ass time.
He's going to
I'm not
compare the
gonna
two
lie.
cases. Let him ask it.
I'm gonna mute again, Millie, because I have to finish packing my bag.
Okay, I'm gonna make the argument. Okay, so Daniel, I don't know why you're trying to parallel an argument with the AEA versus
I'm
the
muted.
INA.
They
They
didn't
are
let
two
him ask the
separate
questions. He was like,
immigration
okay, well,
laws.
I'm just
Abrego
going
I
was
to
understand.
removed out of the
He didn't
country
finish
under
arguing.
Not what
the
I'm claiming.
INA.
That's not what I'm claiming.
Okay, well, we're talking about Abrego Garcia. The AEA
Got
is
it.
not
Cool.
relevant
And I'm
to
trying
case.
to check the consistency of your arguments or your positions.
The
So,
argument
once
is
again-
about Abrego Garcia.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not going to
Cool,
argue
cool,
with a
cool.
parallel that's not relevant because you're building what's called a straw man fallacy.
No,
You
A
understand
comparison
that,
is
right?
not a
I'm
straw
asking
man.
you.
We don't know yet.
It can't be
That
a straw
is a
man if I'm
straw
asking
man.
in your own words and I'm not changing anything.
Daniel, you are literally trying to build a straw man based off of the AEA so that you could turn around and use
Well, it
that as
depends what
a
he's gonna ask.
collapsing of the INA argument with Abrego Garcia. Am
Why
I
won't
correct?
you,
Well, let's
why
hear-
won't you let him finish
No,
the
you're not.
question?
Because
it depends
it's a
what he's
straw man
asking.
fallacy.
How do you know
It
it's going to be a
depends on
straw
what
man
he's
if he hasn't
asking.
asked the question?
I would have to take.
Because he's already starting with trying to debate Abrego based
It
on
might be
It's a
comparable,
comparison.
but the logic might be
It's a
comparable.
comparison
Let's
and
see what the logic
contrast.
is.
not
of
even
your
close to a
consistency.
comparison.
How is it not a
No, I
comparison to
don't
bring up
debate in
something to compare it to?
If it matters whether or not it's another entity, non-governmental agency, government entity versus a governmental entity, I'm trying to check consistency on whether or not you would still apply that. And I'm simply asking. And I was told that with Donald Trump's usage of the Enemy Aliens Act of 1798 was justified. And I'm saying, but what about the times when he? But the thing is, in these
This
cases,
is automatically
was it?
going to a
Oh
straw
my
man.
gosh.
Why can you not
No,
debate
you don't know
Abrego's
the term.
case
Why
on
can
the
you
don't
not let
actually
him finish
understand
the
the-
question?
He doesn't even get to an answer. Like I'm still waiting for
Typically,
the reason
questions
why
don't get
he
to
brought
answers.
that up.
I'm waiting for you to get to the end too. I'm curious myself, Daniel. Where are you
Yes.
going with it?
It's as simple as
Yeah.
this. I'm simply trying to
Yeah.
check whether or not the Enemy Aliens Act of 1798, when its requirements that it be an actual governmental aid, that it be a foreign nation or government, that it actually has been an invasion, military action, yada yada yada. And if it's
Back to
justified,
Abrego.
when has it if that hasn't happened with anybody else, and that's the reason that wasn't upheld, why does it matter whether or not it's a governmental agency versus a cartel? When it comes to Abrego Garcia,
what
that's
does this
harassing.
have to
That's
do
doing
What's that have to
harassment.
do with the
Okay,
Abrego?
Okay, yeah,
case,
no,
though?
yeah,
I'm
no,
simply
I have
trying
to-
to. I am
But
simply
you
trying to.
You just gotta let him get it
Hang
out.
on, real
You're
quick.
so lost.
Does left leaning and Rinwald understand why I cut him off early? Because I know a
Now I
fucking
do,
straw
now I
man
heard
when
it.
I
Ready
see
to
one.
explain it.
I don't like the question, but
Because
I mean, let
you
him
don't
ask it.
understand the Convention Against Torture. You don't understand what 3 things he filed for in immigration court.
I'm quite
You don't
aware.
That's mudding
understand.
it up.
You don't understand the
I'm
INA,
quite aware.
which is exactly why I was making the argument I was making. If you understand, then explain
for
to
you.
me what. If you understand, then explain to me what the Convention Against Torture is.
We're not here for a voir dire of me.
Well, you just asked about specific things regarding Abrego Garcia, and that is a specific thing regarding Abrego Garcia, which is why it.
And I'm not
pertains to
arguing
the
against it.
government.
And I'm not arguing against it.
Right, but
Then what are you doing?
Yeah, there's AEA versus INA, right? Take
Yes.
gang out of Abrego. Take gang affiliation out of the INA because
Yes.
that's not what was
Absolutely.
used in his case, right? So I'm trying to figure out,
Mhm.
since gang is in the AEA with the predatory incursion and it's not with Abrego, how are you trying to tie the two?
All I'm trying to ask is whether or not it matters to you who actually does it and will it stay consistent. I was simply trying to test the waters because I just got here and I wasn't here 20, 30 minutes earlier
Right,
while you guys
right.
were discussing. I'm simply trying to actually check. That's it.
Right.
I
It's-
just got
And when you say
You're
who
not gonna
does
find
it,
and the
any-
thing is,
you're
I'm
not-
asking for a
I'll
little bit
save
of
you the
grace.
time. You're not going to
Yeah.
find any logical
Okay.
inconsistency here.
I
I
just
don't know you.
But what,
I just want to make sure
when
that
you
we
say
can
who
all
does
agree.
it, what do you mean who does it? What do you mean who does it when you ask who does it?
Okay. The
Yeah.
fear. Who is the actual credible
This
fear?
panel
If-
keeps
if
just
it doesn't
going on
matter who
to
is the credible
arguing
fear
the
of.
most
What are
fucking
you talking
about
pedantic,
credible
irrelevant
fear
bullshit,
now?
I
What-
wanted
rather
to-
than actually
I'm trying
talking
to
about the
make
case.
sure
It's,
that in this
oh my
discussion,
god.
please allow me 10 seconds. Simply to point out, I'm just trying to make sure that the entity that's required, the fear or whatever, I'm just trying to make sure that it's actually
Fear
that
is
you
required.
care. I'm asking whether or not you care
Credible
about which is more
fear is
important,
required
the
for
letter of the
asylum.
law or the spirit of the law. That's all I'm trying to basically test.
So
That's it.
credible fear is asylum. That was
I-
denied.
And withhold.
Got it. Cool.
And the withhold was granted based on the harassment from the gang
Great. I'm well aware.
in El Salvador. The
None of this is
Convention
news to
Against
me.
Torture claim was denied. That's why I said if I were the attorneys in this case, I would have made the argument that he could have been sent back to El Salvador because the Convention Against Torture claim was denied for El Salvador and he was handed to the El Salvadorian government.
I would just like to make clear, though, that SCOTUS did rule that the deportation was illegal because he had withholding, right?
Yes, that's
Well, no. No, they didn't. All they did was kick it down to the lower court and have them clarify meanings of words.
So let me read
and
this then.
tell them that they don't have jurisdiction over another country's citizen.
This is a quote from the first page of the SCOTUS ruling. The United States acknowledges that Abrego Garcia was subject to a withholding order forbidding his removal to El Salvador, and that the removal to El Salvador was therefore illegal. That's a direct quote.
Nobody has denied that.
You just denied that SCOTUS said that it was illegal.
Their ruling, their opinion was literally kicking it down to the lower court for them to clarify definitions of words.
But it also
it
did also rule that the deportation was
over
illegal.
Another country's citizen that is in that country.
It did also rule that the removal was illegal, though, right?
No,
they didn't rule that. That
they
was
just simply
ruled
they
upon
just-
earlier. They reiterated what it is that the government said. The government said that those things.
Yeah, they said that he needed
the
a day in
Supreme
court. That's
Court.
it.
Okay, can
Back
I
up the lower
please
court.
fucking talk? Again, the Supreme Court is quoting what the Trump administration said. That is not their order. They never gave a per curiam on that order. You understand?
Backed
That's
up the
exactly
lower
what I was
court
saying.
decision, which was
It
bring
didn't
them back to
affirm the
court.
lower court's decision. It was granted in part.
course
The
it did.
motion that was, hold on. The motion that was submitted was by the Trump administration. If you look at the Supreme Court document, it is the Trump administration's order that is granted and their petition that is granted. They quote the Trump administration, but they also granted in the fact that they moved the time restrictions from the case. They also said that we have to follow the facilitation, but they cannot require and ask and request the government for the effectuation of Abrego being returned.
Right.
They also said in the same opinion
Clarified.
that the district court was going to lack authority over the executive branch in the concern of foreign affairs. That is laid out in the opinion.
That's not what they said.
Okay, what about,
They
I'll
said,
look up and
keep
read
that in mind. No. In the second part, they asked, you need to clarify because you're vague. And she did the next day, clarify what facilitate means. And they say, when you do that, keep in mind what their authority is. And that's when she said, okay, I want a daily report. And then they had 2 weeks worth of, let me know what you're doing to facilitate. And then they tried to do the state secret. They had a hearing on that. And finally, all that shit for nothing because they brought him back anyway. So he complied with the order of the lower court that was backed up by the Supreme Court, which was to facilitate the return. And now we're all good.
I would also like to read this from the SCOTUS, because, I mean, they absolutely did rule that it was illegal, or at least upheld the ruling that it was illegal. It said the United States government arrested Kilmar Garcia in Maryland and flew him to the Terrorism Confinement Center in El Salvador, where he has been detained for 26 days and counting. To this day, the government has cited no basis in law for Abrego Garcia's warrantless arrest, his removal to El Salvador, or his confinement in Salvadorian prison, nor could it. So that absolutely does rule that it's illegal.
It does affirm that it was illegal to send them.
They're stating the facts of the case.
The fact of the case is that it was an illegal removal.
Hold on. Oh my God. Okay. So I literally pulled up this order. Okay. What you are reading is somewhere down there.
Dissent. No, it's in two places. In the first paragraph and in the dissent.
There is no dissent. There's no dissent.
That's
this
not
is
a-
a
Yeah, no, that
908.
was a concur. Yeah, that was a
Or
concur.
her
Okay.
concurring opinion or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, so I
Not
want
the
you
dissent.
to understand this because the Supreme Court is just laying out the argument, okay?
Mhm.
And this is an application to vacate the injunction entered by the United States District Court.
Mhm.
So this is the Trump administration's application to vacate
To throw it out.
injunction that
I'm
was
the one that brought
granted.
this
Can
up.
you stop talking over me? Fuck's sake. You guys are so frustrating. I tried to spend time to debate on this fucking app. And when I come on here, all you guys do is fucking steamroll. Is it not hard for you to just listen to what I'm about to read to you?
Did you not cut Daniel
Thank
off
you.
like a million times when he was asking
Oh,
you
just let her
questions?
go. It's
Daniel
her
was
live. Let's
literally
go.
building a straw man
Okay, go
and
ahead. Go
wasting
ahead.
everybody's
You don't know
fucking
what that term
time.
means.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you should look it up.
I'm
The
well aware.
United States acknowledges that Abrego Garcia was subject to a withholding order forbidding his removal to El Salvador, and that removal to El Salvador was therefore illegal. This is just saying the United States acknowledges this. This is not what the Supreme Court is saying specifically.
Well, then
they're
the
just
Supreme Court
laying
said it
out the
later.
argument for the case.
The Supreme Court said
They're
it
saying
later.
that Trump said it was illegal. They're saying that Trump said it was illegal.
They're saying,
Trump
well, yeah,
didn't
they're
say
saying
it
that
was
it was illegal, and the
His
government didn't
attorney
contest
said
it, so it was illegal.
illegal. The
This is
United
worse.
States represents that the removal to El Salvador was the result of an administrative error. The United States acknowledges, however, that Abrego Garcia had been found to be a member of MS-13, a designated foreign terrorist organization, and that his return to the United States would pose a threat to the public. Abrego Garcia responds that he is not a member of MS-13 and that he has lived safely in the United States with his family for a decade and has never been charged with a crime. On Friday, April 4th, the United States District Court for the District of Maryland entered an order directing the government to facilitate and effectuate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States by no later than 11:59 p.m. on Monday, April 7th. On the morning of April 7th, the United States filed this application to vacate the order. The district court's order, the Chief Justice entered an administrative stay and subsequently referred the application to the court. The application is granted
Are we just reading the
in
whole
part and
ruling?
denied in part, subject to the direction of this order. Due to the administrative stay issued by the Chief Justice, the deadline imposed by the district court has now passed. To that extent, the government's emergency application is effectively granted in part, and the deadline in the challenged order is no longer effective. The rest of the district court order remains in effect, but requires clarification on remand. The order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is being handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. The intended scope of the term effectuate is the district court's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. The district court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in conduct of foreign affairs. For its part, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect future of the steps. The order hereto entered by the Chief Justice is vacated.
Thank you for
So
clarifying
again-
that they
great.
upheld that the removal
Wait,
was
wait.
illegal. Thank you so much.
Let me
And they clarify,
respond.
not effectuate, but facilitate. Got
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Before you
So-
started talking.
So it was an illegal removal.
Right.
We agree. The government agrees.
Improperly
Let
sent.
it-
Plaintiffs agree. The SCOTUS agrees.
Hang
we all
on.
agree. I'm glad we all agree. Okay, cool.
Hang on, because the SCOTUS did not agree. The SCOTUS said that he had been improperly sent to El Salvador, not illegally. Words
what
matter.
if you improperly do a
Words
legal process?
matter.
What is that?
They did
Can
not
you please tell me
vacate
what
the
that is?
order.
The second sentence of this actual
Improperly.
Oh
the
my gosh.
second sentence is Christy Nome in this.
Improperly.
Got it, cool.
Okay,
The second
illegal.
sentence of this is Christy Nome admitting that it was illegal, then stating that it was actually an administrative error. That's the reason. Okay, cool.
Those are
You all
just
get your
facts.
homework.
That
This
is
is
not a
then
SCOTUS
they
ruling.
This
recognizing-
is
He
not the
said
ruling.
the argument
didn't
was
say it
that
was the
the
ruling.
SCOTUS ruled that this was illegal. That is not what took place.
That is
just
exactly
a
what took
fact
place.
You're hanging
of
your
the
hat
case.
on that one word improperly.
And just
you
ignore
to
the
say it.
other
They
three
didn't-
times
they
that
didn't
they
rule it
say
in
it was
this.
illegal, it was not in compliance with U.S.
Yes,
code,
that's
it's
the whole
illegal, it does not
argument. He
comply
said
with
They
the
the
ruled
law.
whole
in
argument
this.
was that the SCOTUS
I didn't-
ruled.
No, not in this. But if we show that they
Right,
ruled
which
it
was
elsewhere, will
our
you accept it?
argument. That's the you literally
No one
just
argued
proved
that it
our
ruled in
argument.
this in
His
this
argument
document.
was
He
that
did.
SCOTUS ruled it was illegal.
Not in this document.
No, in this
Somebody said
document they
that.
did.
In this-
No, in this document they did.
No, they didn't. The beginning of it is just stating the facts of this. That's the summary of the case. You realize that, right?
Okay,
They,
well, I'll
they
give it to
ordered
you
him to
guys.
facilitate his return for what? For why? Why did they do that?
They didn't
You're
order
upset?
him. Oh my God.
They
Are
didn't
you
order him to
wait, wait.
facilitate the return?
Wait, hold on.
They literally
I'm
even
gonna
kicked
give it
it
to
back
you.
down for them to
Listen, I'll give
clarify.
you. I'll give.
And
We're gonna take it
why
all
were
back.
they seeking
It's
remedy?
not illegal. Well, it's not illegal. It was improper. But the vacate was
Wait,
to
no, it
not
was
bring
illegal.
him back.
And therefore
Wait,
illegal.
just give it to him. It doesn't matter because the ruling was bring his ass back, whether it's illegal or improper. Bring his ass back so you do it right in the court.
Okay, left leaning. I
Right?
love you. I can't do
That's
this
not
anymore.
even
I
what
love you, buddy.
SCOTUS